Sometimes when readers first encounter the trolley scenarios in Sandel's Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do, Chapter 1, they'll say that if I were on a runaway trolley and I saw that there were a bunch of workers on the track ahead of me, and there was one worker on an alternate track, and I had the decision, or had the option, or the opportunity to flip the switch and move the trolley to kill the one rather than the many, I wouldn't flip the switch. Instead, I would get on the bullhorn and say, "Hey, workers, get out of the way!" Or I would fix the brakes really fast. Or I would find a way to save all of them. And sometimes I'll go to a lot of trouble and expend a lot of mental energy trying to figure out a creative way to not kill any of them. However, this misses the point. The trolley scenarios are philosophical thought experiments, and they're intended to serve as intuition pumps. They're intended to help us clarify what our underlying implicit moral principles are, what our values are. And if we solve the scenario rather than biting the bullet and dealing with it and making the hard decision of what we ought to do, we miss the opportunity to reflect on the reasons why we would prefer either flipping the switch or not flipping the switch, either shoving the large man or not shoving the large man. So one common mistake, one common confusion is to attempt to solve the trolley scenario and save all of the workers. Don't do that. Of course, that's preferred, but instead, make the hard decision about what you ought to do and consider why. That's the purpose. Another common confusion, another common mistake that readers new to this chapter and new to trolley scenarios make is that they say, this is just irrelevant. I'm never going to be in a situation like this. The real world, real life isn't like this. And so why are we even talking about it? They just dismiss it for those reasons. However, in the age of self-driving cars, or in the age of developing self-driving cars, the need for trolley scenario ethics and some clarity on what ought to occur is becoming more relevant every day. Well, why is that the case? Well, there are going to be situations where self-driving cars are going to be presented with unavoidable accidents, and they're going to have to know whether to prioritize the passengers in their vehicle, passengers in another vehicle, bystanders. And if engineers don't take the time to pre-program the cars to deal with these sorts of situations, well, then they're probably shirking the responsibility to do so, and they're missing an opportunity to maximize ethical goodness in the world and doing the right thing. So the trolley scenarios may have been somewhat irrelevant in times past, maybe only relevant for trolley workers, or trolley drivers, I suppose, or conductors. But in 2018 and beyond, as self-driving cars are coming online, we're definitely going to need some trolley-type scenario ethics to pre-program these self-driving cars. I've spoken with some engineers of self-driving cars, and they, in many cases, reject the idea that there isn't an accident that they can avoid. They say we can adjust the brakes, we can accelerate, we can turn, but there are going to be cases where the computer can calculate that an accident is going to happen due to weather conditions or whatever, and if that vehicle has the ability to prioritize either killing more passengers or fewer passengers, or simply harming them, calculating the likelihood that they'll be harmed or killed, taking into account the number of passengers in the vehicles, perhaps even the ages, the occupations, etc. of the passengers in other vehicles. I think that all of that should be taken into account. It's not easy at all, but the point here is just that trolley scenarios are indeed very relevant in the age of self-driving cars. Last, a common confusion or common mistake when persons first consider the trolley scenarios is that they confuse psychological propensity with morality. They'll say that if I were in a situation like that, I don't know, I think I would just, maybe I'd flip it really fast, or maybe I would just be frozen in indecision, or if I had the chance to push the large man off of the overpass, I just don't think I could bring myself to do so. Those considerations are relevant, they're useful. However, that's not the end of the story, because just because you would or wouldn't push the large man, or you would be inclined or disinclined to do this or that, that doesn't give us full clarity on what you morally ought to do if given the time to reflect and respond, which of course is what we're doing. So you're not actually in the trolley scenario. You've got some time to step back and reflect and think about many different considerations. Please do so. Don't simply put yourself in the moment and say, I can't really say how I would decide in the moment, or here's how I would decide in the moment, and that settles the issue. That's not the case at all. Two bonus tips. One is that the purpose of all this is to gain that insight into our moral principles, our underlying values, and we want to contrast those underlying values with our intuitive judgments. And when we're able to do that with clarity and articulate some principles that can make sense of our intuitive judgments, that helps us to achieve what political philosopher and moral philosopher John Rawls called reflective equilibrium. If we can do that with our own views and have a set of principles that organizes all of our judgments, that's called narrow reflective equilibrium. If we can do it in a culture with many other persons, and we can have a conversation and come to some quasi-consensus about what our underlying values are and what our principles are and what our immediate judgments are, that's called wide reflective equilibrium. Sidebar, just some bonus stuff. And another bonus point is that notice that all this suggests, or all of this implies or takes for granted that there are better and worse answers to the trolley dilemma, which suggests also and implies and reveals the fact that philosophers and ethicists take for granted that moral subjectivism, or the view that all moral judgments are equally good, none are better than others, is definitely flawed. Do some additional research on the weaknesses of relativism or subjectivism. There's the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy online. That's an excellent resource. Or you can also read Chapter 3 of My Ethics in a Nutshell. That chapter is called Why Ethics Isn't Ice Cream.